Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. The Lakers fell in Game 1, 108-90 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder take a 1-0 series lead. OKC outscored LA in each quarter and looked progressively more confident and comfortable. They held the Lakers to just 37 points in that second half. That said, I think there was a lot to be encouraged by from LA's side, from a strategic perspective, from an execution perspective. The Lakers took an early lead in this game, and they were right there up until a late first quarter run, which put OKC ahead basically for good. But LA had a couple surges in the second quarter and the third quarter. They were within just a few points midway through the third quarter. But every time they would get close, OKC would respond. The Lakers would have a turnover, a missed open three, a missed layup, something that would catapult OKC into early offense transition. The Lakers would have a breakdown on their coverages against Shea, and then OKC would make them pay. And tonight, the big theme of the night to me was I liked a lot from LA from a process and execution standpoint, but every mistake they made, nearly every mistake they made, OKC capitalized on, and you just cannot afford to make mistakes or many mistakes. You can't have 18 turnovers against this team. You cannot have a 94.9 offensive rating. You can't shoot 42% against this team and expect to win, make only 10 threes, only get to the free throw line 13 times. Those numbers are far too low against this defense. Another positive thing was their coverage against Shea. It looked a lot more like the Kevin Durant coverage than the Anthony Edwards coverage. And last postseason, they held Ant reasonably in check. He still put up some big numbers and still had some big fourth quarters and clutch stretches. But tonight, the Lakers held Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to his fewest points of the season, his lowest point total with 18. First time this season, Shai did not crack 20 points. And also his highest turnover total. His previous high in turnovers was 5. Tonight, the Lakers forced 7 turnovers from Shai, and his second most in the playoffs ever. His previous high was 8 in the playoffs. So you're right there, nearly his career high in terms of playoff turnovers. I thought LeBron was the best player on the floor, all things considered tonight, which continues to be a really promising trend for LA. Rui, DeAndre, Marcus, they all had impactful moments. Austin Reaves, we will touch on that a little bit later. He had incredibly rough night. But despite the things that went well for LA, despite the execution and the process and some of the strategy and schematics, I think throwing OKC off and just some of the doubles they threw at Shea, like the Thunder were just not prepared for and did not execute well out of that. Despite that, they still lost this game by 18. And I think depends how you want to look at things, right? Like there's certainly room for improvement. I don't think Austin's going to shoot this poorly the rest of the series. I mean, he really can't shoot worse than he did tonight. Marcus, I think, will shoot better. DA had a rough second half after a really strong first half. Like the Lakers, I think, can do some things offensively and overall have a better result. But at the same time, if I told you going into tonight, the Lakers are going to hold Shea to 18 points and 7 turnovers, you would think this would be a Lakers win or at least a close game that maybe OKC found a way to eke out. They were pretty comfortable there over the last 18 minutes of this game, despite Shea not looking like himself. And the Lakers are going to have to make some adjustments defensively. I think they tilted things a little too aggressively in terms of the scheme against Shea. And like they won the battle against Shea, but it put them, I think, in a tough spot in the overall war here. And I think they're going to have to dial it back a little bit because I think the biggest thing that we saw tonight versus the last series is like OKC is not Houston. They are going to make the open threes that you give them. They are going to score in the 4-on-3, 3-on-2 situations. They have Chet as an offensive rebounder, cutter, transition guy, low post threat, mid-range threat, hit a couple threes tonight. So it's just a different beast altogether. And so, yeah, it does remind me a little bit of the battle with Houston in terms of a big part of taking Houston out of their offense was like, can we slow down KD? And they only did it for the one game he played in. But like, even go back to the regular season, they had the success in Houston doing that. Tonight, again, they were able to limit Shea, but you still lost this game by 18. So I think just limiting Shea is not going to be enough. And I think that there's probably a better balance where even if Shea drops 25 or 30, but still has 4 or 5 turnovers, if you can limit some of the other guys and really some of the easy looks that OKC generated, that's where you find the sweet spot and balance. But really, LA is just gonna have to score more. I said this going into my series preview. My big question for the Lakers was, can they score enough against this defense? And so far up to this point this season, the answer has been no. They had a 95.8 offensive rating in the regular season. That was actually higher than the individual offensive ratings with Luka, Austin, and LeBron on the floor. They all were below 95. So, I mean, their offensive numbers actually got propped up by that final game of, in LA, where basically everybody rested. Luka and Austin were out, but LeBron rested, and they rested a bunch of guys. Like, that actually boosted their offensive numbers against OKC. When you look at the 3 games prior to that, when they had at least 2 of the big 3 in those games, they had an even worse. I mean, they were in the low 90s from an offensive rating perspective. So in the regular season, they cannot score against this defense. And so far, again, tonight, 94.9 offensive rating. That's just not going to cut it. This is a team you're going to need to score. I mean, I said at a minimum, they needed to score 110 plus to beat this team. We saw it tonight. OKC scored 108, Lakers scored 110, they win the game, right? So it's not that simple, but LA is going to need to generate offense at a much higher level. I think defensively, I said going to the series, I thought LA would hold up fine, and they held up much better on that end than the offensive end. So that to me is something that they're going to have to figure out progressively throughout the course of the series. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. Let's get into it. So opening thoughts on Lakers Thunder. I think we have to start with the defense for Shea, because that was clearly LA's point of emphasis. So again, they hold Shea to a season low 18 points, and they force a season high 7 turnovers for Shea. He had half of OKC's turnovers, so that alone is a win for LA's defense. Now, the issue was, or one of many issues tonight, was I think they were a little bit too aggressive with the Shea scheme. And I think it's one thing to mix it up. And certainly they had success with it in terms of just straight up limiting his shot attempts. He did not have an efficient night, 8 for 15 shooting, which for him is inefficient by his standards, 0 for 1 on threes. So they really limited his shot attempts. He was 3rd on the Thunder in shot attempts, only got to the free throw line 3 times. So they did a good job contesting without fouling. So some real wins for LA's defense against Shea. At the same time, I think there was far too many breakdowns within the scheme, and with how aggressive it was, there were times the Lakers had 3 defenders like 35 plus feet out, and forget 4 on 3, forget 3 on 2. It was 4 on 2 situations for OKC once Shea got the ball out. And yes, they are able to turn him over a bit. Again, 7 turnovers, half of OKC's turnovers. Like, they were able to force the ball out of his hands, and they're able to force Lou Dort to have to make plays off the dribble, which he is not super comfortable doing, but to his credit, did have 4 assists tonight. They were forcing the ball into Alex Caruso's hands and to Kayson Wallace's hands. And like, again, that's a win for LA's defense. But the issue is, and I think if you contrast how LA defended Shea versus how OKC was able to defend LeBron and Austin and some of the other guys, it's like, if they're sending extra attention, OKC can make that rotation out. And you would see, if you like took pause the film and took a screenshot of the defense on a particular moment, you'd be like, oh, well, Rui's open in the corner. Flash forward 2 seconds, and the Lakers are making that pass to Rui in the corner, and there's a Thunder player closing out to Rui and contesting that. And Rui made a couple of contested shots. He also did a good job racking the closeout and attacking off the dribble. But point being, OKC can play an aggressive style of defense and then still rotate out to shooters and make those shots contested, run you off the line, and force you to have to adjust to their defense rather than the other way around. Lakers had an element of that tonight, and I do think everybody was, for the most part, locked in, bought in defensively. But there were some real mistakes in terms of split. I just combined Shea and split. Shea split the double team. Like if Shea's splitting the double team, it's over. Like they're going to score. So you cannot, if you're the two guys that are doubling or trapping, you cannot let him split the double. And he split the double at least 5 or 6 times tonight. And you saw immediately it was like dribbling into, I think he got a layup out of one of them, dribbled into a couple pull-ups, dribbled into driving kick threes, or then the low man rotates up to take Shea. He hits with a bounce pass for a dunk or a layup. It's like, if you're doubling, like you cannot screw that up. And the Lakers did that a few times tonight. And then on top of it, obviously he just can reverse the ball out or just hit the release valve. And then all of a sudden Thunder are playing with an advantage. And we saw yes, that they had a few turnovers out of playing with an advantage, but for the most part, they got pretty good shot quality. And that was where Chet did a lot of his damage with offensive rebounds, with cuts, with dives, with spot up stuff. And AJ Mitchell playing with an advantage, got downhill a bunch. And then they also, that was where a lot of their threes came from, of just playing with an advantage, kick out, open corner three, open above the break three. And so I think the Lakers, there's a sweet spot here where clearly the Lakers wanted to send a message defensively, wanted to take Shea out of his comfort zone, and they did that. But again, if you're going to play this type of defense, you have to be able to, one, stop him from splitting the double, which again, it wasn't a lot, but it was enough where it started to stand out a bit of you can't screw this up. But two, you have to be doing a better job of from that point out, rotating and preventing the advantage from extending, which I felt like OKC progressively did a better job of. And you saw they did some little things like bringing Jared McCain in, and all of a sudden Jared McCain hits 3 threes in the fourth quarter, which just continues to push the lead out and ices the game. And it will, I think, force OKC's hand a little bit to play Jared McCain and Isaiah Joe more, which gives LeBron targets defensively. And it is a win for LA in the sense of taking Caruso, Wallace, Dort out or to a degree and limiting their minutes. But if the Lakers are going to play that aggressively out of that, I think the rotations out of that have to be better, have to be sharper, have to have more conviction. And again, there's a lot of good from that. And you look at Shea just not even getting many shots up, the turnovers, and there were stretches where LA was able to lock the Thunder up and do a really good job defensively. But we saw there's just diminishing returns at some point with this scheme. And I think they have to find, to me, this needs to be more shaded over a little bit more toward the Ant game plan of, okay, he's at the top of the arc. We have the primary guy on the ball and we are loading up, flooding. And you got the 2 guys at the elbows, you got the 2 guys in the post, and it's a 5-man defense against the guy. But it's if Shea, Shea could take a step back 3, he could take a pull up 3 against Marcus. And shout out to Marcus, he did a great job on Shea tonight. If he wants to do that, then the Lakers, I think, should live with that. And if Shea wants to take a bunch of contested threes, so be it. But what you do is as he starts to make his move and shift toward the left or to the right, that's where that second guy comes. Then you rotate out of that. But I think doing it 35 feet, 40 feet out. Even in the Houston series, we saw there was a couple times where they threw those aggressive schemes against KD and the Rockets were able to score out of it. But also we saw it on the flip side from the Lakers. Remember, there was a play. They tried to double LeBron, they being the Rockets. It was late in the first half, I think of game 2. They send the double against LeBron. He just whips it to Rui in the corner. Rui cashes in an open corner 3. And there were some plays like that tonight where it's just, I think it was smart of the Lakers to test some of their shooters, test some of their guys as playmakers, as decision makers. And you do want that more than Shea just dropping 40 efficiently, getting to the line, etc. But I think they have to find a better balance between the aggression and selling out versus him and letting everybody else play with an advantage. Because I think we saw tonight that I just think Shea they could still win the series with Shea averaging 20 points a night. This is just a different supporting cast than the one the Lakers faced in the last round. Second big thing for me tonight was LeBron. And again, I mentioned it, like LeBron got off to a great start, had 12 points in the first quarter. I think had 16 at half, 20 through 3 and finished with 27, but 12 for 17 shooting from him, 3 for 6 on threes, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, only 2 turnovers. So 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio from LeBron. And the Lakers did not have many guys everyone who played outside of the garbage time guys had a negative plus minus, but there was only a few guys who had a single digit negative plus minus. LeBron was one of them. They were -6 in LeBron's 36 minutes and -12 in LeBron's 12 minutes that he sat. So, I mean, the offense really died tonight when LeBron was off the floor. And that's something that the Lakers are going to have to figure out because they could not score really when LeBron was off the floor. But the LeBron bully ball, like they don't have an answer for LeBron. And even if Jalen Williams comes back, I actually think Dort does a better job against LeBron in the post than Jalen Williams does. But like they just don't have an answer. Like the only guy from like a strength perspective, maybe they have 2 guys from a strength perspective who could hang with LeBron on the block. And that's Isaiah Hartenstein and the center, Jalen Williams. But obviously LeBron's got the speed and athleticism, the footwork, the moves to beat those guys off the dribble or beat those guys in the post. But like, that's it. Everybody else is just too small, too weak. Like if it's Chet, just doesn't have the strength and has to rely on his length. If it's Dort, too small, like not strong enough, not tall enough, not long enough. And then everybody else is just too small to defend LeBron. Like, Caruso, I thought had some solid possessions against him, but it's just, they don't have an answer. Now the issue is like, I think they could not have an answer for LeBron and LeBron play great and the Lakers offense just still not be good enough. And that to me is exactly what happened tonight, where like LeBron scored 27 points. He had 6 assists, definitely had more assist opportunities that he generated that the Lakers weren't able to capitalize on, took care of the ball, was efficient from the floor. And like the Lakers barely cracked 90 points. So they're going to need a lot more from everybody else. But I think from the LeBron standpoint of him being the best player on the floor, him controlling things offensively from the post, and his jumper was falling, 3 for 6 on threes. That was a big thing. Hit a couple threes early. And I mentioned that in a couple of the preview pods I've done. Like LeBron's 3-point shot is an X factor in this series. He has not shot the ball well from deep this season. He shot just under 32% in the regular season, shot 29% against the Rockets. So they're going to test LeBron. We saw it tonight. They were okay with LeBron taking some of those threes, and he's got to be, I think, ideally for LA, making a few a night. And tonight he did that. So I think there's even more LA can go to in terms of playing out of LeBron, with LeBron out of the post. Led the team in field goal attempts with 17, but I mean, you could jack that up even higher to 20, 22. Like it's kind of similar to me to the beginning of the Houston series, where it's like it's working with LeBron out of the post, and you got to spam that even more. And the 2-man game with Marcus or Austin or whoever trying to get LeBron matched up with Isaiah Joe, Jared McCain, AJ Mitchell, like doesn't really matter who's guarding him. He's going to have an advantage against them. But if you could pick on some of the other guys, I think that just forces OKC to double, get in rotation. And I think we saw LA generate some really good looks out of that. Austin, I'm going to touch on him with one of my takeaways. So I want to save that section, but when you factor everything in, it was arguably his worst game of the season, or at least worst offensive game of the season. This stat blew my mind. It was the worst. He went 3 for 16, worst field goal percentage on 15 plus field goal attempts by a Lakers player in Lakers playoff history on 15 or more attempts. So that is a pretty high volume, and it does go to a certain class of player. But I mean, 3 for 16 is just nowhere near good enough. But put a pin in Austin. We will touch on that in my takeaway number 1. And then I thought it was a mixed bag with DA, Rui, and Marcus. Marcus, great job against Shea as the primary defender and guarding him off of the ball. He had 4 steals tonight. Like just all the tricks of the trade with Marcus. I mean, dude is just a winner and a two-way stud. 7 assists. He led the team in assists. Awesome playmaking from Marcus. Even the turnovers, it felt like he had more turnovers, but he was only clocked for 2. So, I would have guessed 4 if you asked me how many I thought he had. But only 2 from him. And so that was the positive. The downside was the shooting, 4 for 15, 2 for 8 on threes. It like losing Luka and then losing Austin, but now Austin coming back and not being the same player so far. And then also Luke Kennard being phased out from an offensive perspective as well. It has put more on Marcus's plate. And I thought it was a little bit too much Marcus offensively I don't mind Marcus taking a guy in the post. If they're putting Isaiah Joe on Marcus or Jared McCain, go take him in the post, do some sort of move, rip through, like draw the foul. Marcus is really good at that. But when it's like Marcus ISO jumpers, that's when I start to think it's gone a little bit too far in that direction where that's just not really part of his game from a sustainability perspective. And I think that is something that the Lakers have to tweak a little bit going into game 2. DA, really strong first half, 5 for 6 shooting. Actually started 5 for 5. Missed his final 7 shots of the game. I thought had a really rough start to the third quarter. Missed an open lob, had the ball poked out of his hands twice, didn't catch a couple passes, and then had a sequence where he missed 3 straight layups. And so he also dealt with foul trouble. So I thought like really strong first half for DA, somewhere between invisible and disaster in the second half. And then Rui just had an awesome game, like 18 points, 7 for 13 shooting, 3 for 6 on threes, really attacked well from the weak side. I think defensively he was part of sometimes the doubling where there would be splits or some of the rotations I think could have been better from him on the defensive side. But I will give him credit for being aggressive. Like he was shooting more and being more aggressive, attacking from the weak side than he typically is. And if anything, we're sometimes talking about Rui needing to shoot more. And I still think he could shoot even more than he did. But I thought he found a much more appropriate level of aggression offensively tonight. And then everyone else, it was quiet performances, and we'll touch on it a little bit more in the notable performers section. Speaking of notable performers, let's just get into it. So LeBron, already touched on him, 27, 4, 6, 1 steal, 12 of 17 shooting, 3 for 6 on threes, 0 for 1 at the free throw line. Got to the free throw line early and didn't get back again. This was an odd game from a free throw shooting perspective because these are 2 of the best teams in the league at drawing fouls, and they combined to shoot 25 free throws. So this was very much a game of let the guys play, and we're going to swallow our whistle. We're not going to call things. And I actually think that favors OKC based on their level of physicality and the type of contact that they typically get away with. If they're going to be able, like, if you look at the 2 guys who had more than 2 fouls on the OKC side were Jalen Williams, the center, and Jared McCain. And if you're OKC, that's a win for your defense. Like Isaiah Hartenstein picked up the 2 fouls early, didn't foul again the rest of the game. Chet didn't even pick up a foul. Shea had 1, Dort had 1. You go to Caruso had 1. Wallace did have 2, but they pretty much stayed out of foul trouble tonight. On the Lakers side, you had, just with your starters, DA had 4, Marcus had 3, Austin had 3, but then everybody else was 2 or less. So it was an interesting game from an officiating perspective, but I thought LeBron overall, in my opinion, was the best player on the floor, continued his play from the Houston series, and it's just been a remarkable start from the 41-year-old. I mean, it's just, this is absurd what he's been able to do. And it's even one thing to do it against Houston, like top 10 defense, but we'll say not the smartest group from a schematic and tactical perspective. Doing this against OKC, the best defense in the league, I think one of the best modern defenses of all time, and also one of the best coaches in the league, and Mark Daigneault. Like LeBron, just, I mean, there's nothing you can do with the way that he's playing right now, other than try to force him into shooting jumpers. And even tonight, he made most of his jumpers. Then talked about Marcus, 12, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. Let me pull up the box score here. Marcus, 12 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 steals, 2 turnovers, 4 for 15 shooting, 2 for 8 on threes, 2 for 2 from the foul line. AR, again, going to touch on him with my takeaway, but 8 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 block, 4 turnovers, 3 for 16 shooting, 0 for 5 on threes. He is now, I want to say, he was 2 Yeah, he was 2 for 12. So he's 2 for 17 on threes since coming back from injury. And that's just not going to cut it. He just has not been able to buy a jumper since returning from his absence. DA 10 and 12, 5 offensive rebounds, 2 assists, a block, a turnover, 5 for 12 shooting. Rui 18 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, a block, a turnover, 7 for 13 shooting, 3 for 6 on threes. Already touched on all the starters aside from Austin. Then Vando, I've not yet touched on. I'm going to touch on it briefly with one of my takeaways, but obviously just a really devastating injury that, he went up for a block. His finger jammed into the backboard. And Vando is a tough dude. I would put him up there as one of the toughest dudes on the team easily, right? It's LeBron and it's Marcus and it's Vando, and that might be the 3 toughest guys that you could throw Maxi Kleba in there. Luka, there's a lot of tough guys on this team, but Vando's up there. And to see Vando in that excruciating pain was just, that was really tough to watch. And you saw OKC's reaction to that. And their bench, I was waiting to see the blood or something dangling, but we didn't. They hit it and they got a towel and put his hand in the towel. But OKC, whatever angle they saw of it, clearly their whole bench cleared out and looked like they were going to barf. It was really gruesome. So he, according to Shams of ESPN, has a dislocated finger, and that's just a really tough injury. And I thought he'd come in and given them some good minutes. They obviously tested his 3-point shot, and we're not guarding him offensively, but grabbed a rebound. Just the energy, the toughness. I thought this was going to be a Vando series, and now, I don't know what his status is going to be, but you would assume with how bad it seemed to be that he's probably done for the series, but who knows? He is left-handed, and it was on his right hand, so maybe he's able to play through that. But you got to think about the catching, the rebounding. I would assume that he is done for the series. That's not really something that you could just play through and put a splint on necessarily. We'll see. I don't right now have clarity on that. Jake LaRavia, 3 points, 1 rebound, 1 steal, 1 block. Typical Jake in terms of, had a couple turnovers. He had one sequence where he misses a layup and then he turns the ball over right after that. And it's just offensively has not been able to put it together at all. And, has looked people make the Jake Vando comparisons a lot. He's looked far more like Vando offensively than he has Rui or Luke, right? And he was supposed to be this offensive factor for LA who was a certain level of shooter. He did make a 3 tonight, but it just was too, if I'm not mistaken, that was in garbage time, but still he just is not, I think the defense, on a team that is defensively challenged in terms of positive defenders, I still think Jake holds a certain amount of value, and also he's always available. He always plays hard, but it's just, it's tough when you would like to see a certain two-way element from him. And it's just at this point become once in a blue moon. And I think LA needs more from him offensively. A lot of these possessions, he's not even really looking to score. He's sort of an afterthought out there, and it's just not been good enough. Jackson, it was an interesting Jackson game. I thought he did some things well on the defensive end with some of the switching and the rotating, but then also it felt like they were able to get downhill and get some offensive rebounds when Jackson was out there, right? So you saw some of the benefits to Jackson is the switchability, the versatility, the athleticism. Some of the downsides are the fouls, the turnovers, and actually was second in the team in rebounding. I had 6 rebounds in his 16 minutes, and I thought offensively with the rim running, the rolling, the 3 offensive rebounds, got to the free throw line. Had a lob attempt that I thought he got fouled on that they didn't call. I thought it was a mixed bag from him, but one thing that Pete Zayas and I spoke about in our series preview that we dropped this morning on Great Western Forum was he felt it was going to be more of a Jackson series. I felt it was going to be more of a DA series. I think going off game one, it's going to be more of a DA series, but there's still plenty of time for that to change. But I thought mixed bag for Jackson, in my opinion. Like there were certainly some good things, and you can see where his verticality threat can be a factor. But I think just there's also some defensive limitations against a team that's putting this much paint pressure on and has this much talent and skill. And then Luke Kennard, 7 points, 1 for 4 shooting, 1 for 3 on threes, 4 for 4 at the free throw line. I thought this was one of his worst defensive performances as a Laker, and I thought they mercilessly targeted him and brought him into a bunch of actions. And he partly made up for it with the rebounding, and I thought he had some nice possessions as the doubler, and especially early, rotating over and doubling Shea, or if they got the switch with him against Shea, then forcing Shea into the help. But in terms of his one-on-one defense, like, I mean, whether it was Chet, AJ Mitchell, whoever, like he was getting cooked at the point of attack and off the dribble. And there were just several plays, guys getting offensive rebounds or whatever. Like I thought, actually Luke has largely held up fine. And we had seen at times down the stretch of the regular season, teams target him and succeed against him. But even in the Rockets series, I thought for the most part, like, yeah, there's a few possessions where KD, in the game 2, KD scored over him, or Amen Thompson beat him off the dribble. But like, I thought he held up fine. Like they did progressively target him more. And I think the 2 games that the Lakers lost were his 2 worst performances. But tonight I thought it was a pretty rough performance. Like I thought he was far and away LA's worst defender among the rotation guys, and the one guy that looked like he was having the toughest time executing the scheme and just didn't look like he belonged defensively. Now, offensively, didn't have, like, has been in this extended shooting slump by his standards, but did get fouled on the 3 by Jared McCain. And I think he will be fine and should be a factor. But JJ mentioned it after the game, like he turned down a couple shots early that he probably should have shot. And I think with him, it just continues. Like, I don't know if it's because Austin came back. I think it even started a little bit before Austin came back, but like he's just not been the same player since game 2 of the Rockets series. And when he is getting picked on defensively and it is multiple actions, I just, him playing 29 minutes tonight, he is the 6th man, just kind of by virtue of who's available right now. But I thought he had a pretty rough defensive night, in my opinion. Then stat of the night, we'll look at the they updated LA's offensive rating to 95. It has bumped up from 94.9 to 95. So we have a live update of LA's offensive rating here. But 95 offensive rating is not good enough. They had a 95.8 in the regular season against this team. And through 5 games now, between 4 in the regular season and 1 tonight, the Lakers have not been able to consistently score against this team. And that is my biggest concern moving forward. Is we saw some progress early. We saw more competitive showing early from LA, but the 37 points in the second half, they looked a little fatigued and just not generating the same shot quality in the second half, despite JJ saying they won the shot quality battle and expected score. I think they have some real issues here in terms of figuring out this defense. And then mentioned it earlier, but my other stat of the night is going to be the minus 12 in the 12 non-LeBron minutes. So with LeBron off the floor, I mean, you could also point out they were minus 14 in the 21 non-DeAndre Ayton minutes. You could also look at the Vando and Jake minutes as minutes where they performed a little bit better relatively. But I think those, like, there's an element of, with DA and LeBron in particular, I think those are 2 of the biggest bodies on the team and 2 of the guys who can play with the most force and strength. And I think this is going to need to be a series where LeBron is playing closer to 40. Like, this is the series I think you empty the tank. And if you got to play LeBron 40, like, I don't think you get cute with the minutes in this series. I've been a proponent, even in the Rockets series, being a little bit cautious with the minutes. This series to me is like you throw everything against the wall and you ride the car till the wheels fall off. Like, this is not a series to get cute with the minutes, in my opinion. So of course, like they bench guys late. They put the with 2 minutes left, they went to the garbage time group. So I think under normal circumstances, LeBron plays 38. DA maybe plays 29. and Rui plays 39, Marcus plays 34, Austin plays 38. So like everybody plays a little bit more under normal circumstances, but this has to be, to me, a series where you just empty the clip with your guys, because like JJ talked about it going into the series of he's going to empty the clip at the timeouts. And we saw he only had one timeout for, I think like the whole fourth quarter or most of the fourth quarter, because he's going to be more aggressive. Like anytime they go on a run, you got to call the timeout. That's to me the same thing with the minutes here of like, if LeBron has to play 42, 43 minutes, like that's just what it's going to take, because I don't know if they can survive the non-LeBron minutes. And clearly with DA, it was just, a different level, but without him in there as an interior force. All right, let's get into what I know a lot of you have been waiting for. Let's get into the Austin Reaves discussion. So I already know, I've already seen some of the chatter on X in terms of people want to hear my opinion on this and what I'm going to say and if I'm going to defend Austin. And no, there's no defending this. I have no defense of this. I have no excuse. I have no justification. Tonight confirmed what there's been a vocal, I would call them a vocal minority, but a vocal minority that has been against Austin or doubtful, skeptical of Austin, whatever, for a while. And tonight confirmed a lot of what those Austin doubters have been saying. And I have no way to explain it or defend it. He did not look like a number 2 option tonight. He did not look like a number 3 option tonight. He did not look like a $40 million player. He didn't even look like a $30 million player tonight. And so, I mean, again, I mentioned earlier, worst field goal percentage on 15 plus field goal attempts in Lakers playoff history. That is, especially with some of the performances that D'Lo had not too long ago, that's pretty concerning. It just not a good game from him. I think now I know that there's going to be the overreaction in terms of this means you cannot keep him. This means you have to trade him. This means he's awful. He needs to be punted to the sun. Like, no, I think we can have a real conversation and like breakdown of this. I thought defensively, he held up well on some switches against Chet, which I was actually surprised by in terms of like that, if anything, kind of shows where Chet needs to work on some of his strength stuff. But I thought there were some switches. He had some strips off the dribble, which he did in the Houston series as well. So I actually thought defensively he was okay. Like he did get blown by several times. So to me, it was a bit of a mixed bag on the defensive end. Now, when he's matched up with AJ Mitchell, that's just a mismatch. And AJ Mitchell, like I said going to the series, my X factor for the Lakers was Austin. I said he had to be the third best player on the floor or at least match Chet Holmgren. Forget the third best player. He wasn't even, I mean, at best he was the 5th best Laker, but you can maybe even make a case he was worse than that. And so like not even close to being the third best player on the floor. But I also said AJ Mitchell, like that was a guy who I was concerned with. And I was like, I think they're going to have to figure out, can they limit Chet or can they limit AJ Mitchell? And tonight the answer was neither. And a part of that was Austin as the primary defender on AJ Mitchell, who just, I mean, he's a stud and he's, I think, a future star, whether it's in OKC or elsewhere. I do think Austin's passing tonight with 6 assists, tied for second on the team with LeBron. And I do think some of the shot creation, like he missed a bunch of good looks in the paint. He missed some good jumpers. He had some open threes that he missed. I think there is an element of like the shot creation. There's maybe some progress with the shot creation, but ultimately LA needs more. Like there's no other way to spin this or to talk it out. Like I think there were some things he did well tonight, but what LA needs from Austin is for Austin to drop 25 plus. They need him to be, right now with how LeBron's playing, the sidekick to LeBron, be the number 2. And like, this is a big opportunity for him to show, in the future, it's supposed to be Luka as the number 1, Austin as the number 2, maybe Austin as the number 3, but at least in that top 3. And tonight was just not up to par. And I bring back look at the regular season numbers against the Thunder. He played them in 3 games, did suffer that injury in the 3rd game and played through it, but still, well, just look at his numbers against the Thunder this season. 14.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 43% shooting, 23% on threes, and 4.7 turnovers per game. He had 4 more turnovers in all 3 games, 5 or more in 2 of the 3, and tonight once again had 4 turnovers. So he's not scored at anywhere close to a high enough level against this team. He has not been efficient inside the arc or outside the arc. He has not been up to par from a playmaking perspective, and he's not been up to par from a ball handling, turnover, decision-making perspective. And I still think he's shown a certain floor and a certain ceiling that to me is I think the discourse can get a little bit too negative with him. And I think some of the people who don't believe in Austin overlook a lot of the positives. But the fact of the matter is this Thunder team is not going anywhere. This San Antonio team, who he's also had some struggles against this season, is not going anywhere. And he needs to be better in these types of matchups. Otherwise, it's like if you're trying to build a championship roster around Luka Doncic and he's having these types of performances, you just can't win a championship with this right now. And so I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, like, in my opinion, he has not looked physically like the same player. He's not quite had the same speed or athleticism. But I've also said if he's out there, like, you can't really use the injury excuse. If you're good enough to go and play 36 minutes against the Thunder, and look, he took a big shot from Shea in that 3rd quarter where Marcus pushed Shea into him and Shea clotheslined him, and clearly he was in some measure of pain. But even before that, he was 1 for 11 in the first half. So even if you want to say he took another blow in the second half, he went 2 for 5 in the second half, which is like progress, but 1 for 11 in the first. Like, it just. I don't know. I'm not. I think people are going to jump to bury him and write him off. I'm not at that point, but this was certainly an awful game. I am concerned. I'm like, he's just not played well against this team, and this is a big moment for him. And if he's really hurt, then I don't think he should play. Like, I think it's that simple. If you're hurt, then don't play. And like, if anything, you're hurting the team and you're hurting potentially your pockets right now with the performances you're having. If you're good to go, then play. And I think for his sake and for the Lakers' sake, like, hopefully play better. But I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think this is going to be his worst game of the series. I don't know that he's going to shoot 3 for 16 or worse again. But even then, the bar right now is just so much higher than what he showed. Like, the Lakers needed 3 times as many points from him tonight. They needed at least 5 to 6 more makes, right? They needed a turnover or 2 fewer. Like, they needed a lot more from, like, he's not out there to be just a guy who is like switching on to Chet and getting some assists and creating high percentage looks. Like, that is part of it, but he needs to do more. Austin at some level is going to be judged on how many points do you put up and how efficiently do you do it and how do you take care of the ball. And if you're going to have the 4 turnovers, you better have 8 or 9 assists, not 6. And so he just needs to be better, like, straight up all around. And this is, I think, a big moment for him and for the Lakers and just where things go from here. Because, I mean, if it's 3 more games of this and the Lakers get swept, then, like, we'll have that conversation at that point. But, like, it's certainly not trending in the right direction here. And yeah, I mean, that's my Austin take. I'm not going to bury him the way that some people might want me to, or that the way that some people are, because I think this dude's a competitor and I think he's going to have better performances in the future. But this was an awful performance. I think you can make a case this was his worst performance of the season. And this was a big game, a big moment that the Lakers needed him. This continues to fuel the playoff narrative and chatter about his postseason performances, his shooting in the playoffs. I mean, I got to think now, his shooting this season, I mean, I said it's 2 for 17. So if we break this down here, let's do some quick math. 2 for 17 is 11.7%. He's shooting 11.7% on threes in the playoffs. Now, it's been 3 games, and his jumper and his legs have just not been there, but that's what the Lakers need. Like with Luka out and LeBron carrying the load that he's carrying, and guys like Marcus and Rui and Luke stepping up, I do think Austin had some really nice playmaking moments in Game 5, and I thought he finally started to get into a rhythm in the third quarter in Game 6. But still, it was obviously not himself and not the version of him we're accustomed to, the version he was pre-injury. But he was not close to that tonight. And I mean, he like creates separation against Kayson Wallace, gets blocked, gets downhill, just flinging stuff up, getting blocked, shots altered. Yeah, I mean, didn't get to the free throw line much, only took 2 free throws tonight. Like, I'm out of ways to explain it or justify it. That's just the fact of the matter. So he's got to be much better. And like a normal version of Austin in this series goes. I mean, if he has a tip, like if he has the typical Austin low 20s, 5 to 7 assists on efficient shooting, because he's been a guy always in the 50% shooting range, 60% true shooting. If you get that performance from him, I don't know that the Lakers win this game, because I still think a lot went OKC's way, and there's still a talent gap there. But I think it's a much more competitive game. I think the Lakers crack 100. I mean, just by him adding 14 points, they crack 100, right? So it would have been a much more competitive game with a better showing from him. So he's just got to be better. And I'm sure I'll get some questions on him in the Q&A portion, but that's my take on that. In terms of Game 2 adjustments, I think, as I said at the top multiple times, I think they got to be a little bit more conservative on Shea. I thought OKC did some smart things in terms of putting shooters in certain spots, where they put the safety release guy in terms of the pass out of the double for Shea. And they just figured that out in the second half in a way that the Lakers, I think, are like, there's still a way to aggressively defend Shea in the half court, but I think it's going to be more in a condensed range within sort of the top of the arc area, or like the free throw line extended like nail area. I think they went to this in the first quarter and it was a disaster. I thought it actually shifted a lot of the momentum in the game. Can't go to no LeBron, no Austin. Now, even for as bad as Austin played tonight, there is an element of his just half court ball handling and shot creation that I think is really important to the Lakers. His penetration, the paint touches, that even if he's not like, I probably underselling some of his playmaking tonight. I thought, the 6 assists and had several other assists that could have been there, but like, again, he needs to do more than just playmake. But you can't go no LeBron. And to JJ's credit, he went away from that in the third quarter, in the second half. Like, you need to have one of those two on the floor at all times. I think they could feed LeBron even more in the post and try to spam the LeBron 2-man game, inverted pick and rolls. We saw the 1-3 that Luke hit was off of an inverted pick and roll where he picked and popped and got a 3 on the left wing. They could do more of that. Some more double drag. I think they mix in more double drag, more stack, more horns, just more 3-man actions at the top of the floor. I think for Austin specifically, like, I mean, he just has really struggled at times getting into a flow, or not even at times, basically the entire season series against OKC in terms of, I think, like, generating out of the pick and roll and generating on the ball. So I think there could be some off-ball things they go to with some more pin downs and flare screens to get him going. And he did hit. I think if I'm not mistaken, he hit a he didn't hit a 3. He hit a jumper late. I think he hit like a mid-range jumper coming off of a screen where he broke free, had a wide open jumper and cashed it. And like, you need more of that from him. And so I think, if Austin on the ball is not working, I think you can start going to more off-ball actions for Austin. Similar thing with Luke, where Luke cannot take 4 shots in a game, especially a game he plays 29 minutes. The Lakers need him to just shoot more and like let it fly. And I mean, you contrast it. Isaiah Joe took 6 shots in 11 minutes. Luke Kennard played almost 3 times as many minutes as Isaiah Joe, and he took 2 fewer shots. You can't have that disparity. I mean, Jared McCain came in 15 minutes, took 7 shots. So Luke Kennard has to let it fly and be more aggressive offensively. I think I liked one of the second half adjustments LA made in terms of trying to dare AJ Mitchell to shoot, dare Dort, Caruso, Wallace, and putting DA and Jackson on more so DA, but I mean, they're switching everything, but also putting those guys, like they put DA on Lou Dort and Alex Caruso in the second half. I think part of that was because he was in foul trouble, but it was also like, we're going to roam off this non-shooter or shaky shooter. And you'll see teams do that with their centers where they put their center on a non-offensive threat. And I think the Lakers can do more of that starting at the beginning of game 2. And then I think continue to feed DA, but he's got to be better than he was in the second half. And then it's obviously before I do my rewatch, so I'm sure I'll have a lot more notes off the rewatch. And then takeaway number 3 before we get into the Q&A, Jared Vanderbilt injury update, dislocated right finger. And again, I'm going to assume he's out for the series, but maybe we get some good news on that and he's able to return, albeit in a limited fashion. And again, with that type of injury, it's just tough to catch the ball. It's tough to grab rebounds. It's tough to dribble. It's tough to shoot. So I would assume he's out, but we'll see. All right, let's get into the Q&A. First one from Mint Millions. Thank you for the super chat. LBJ is unbelievable. Always comes out ready to play at 41. Still the best player on the court. Sad he's the unluckiest player of all time who gets no help and plays super teams. I mean, 10 out of 10, no notes. I wouldn't say he's the unluckiest player of all time. I think there are players who have been unluckier, whether you want to touch on like injuries, luck, or just the situation they were drafted into, the rosters they were in. Like I think LeBron tried to make the most of his first stint in Cleveland and then empowered himself and went to Miami, went back to Cleveland and then ended up going to LA. But I mean, certainly like, the Kevin Durant decision in 2016, like changes LeBron's career. I truly think he gets at least one more title if KD never goes to the Warriors. And I think the Cavs would have had a real shot to win it again in 2017. And then even in 2018 with no Kyrie, I mean, you saw what LeBron did in game 1. You saw how great he was that series. Like I think without KD, they would have had a shot to win that series as well. So certainly, like, I mean, he has played maybe against the greatest team of all time or in that conversation with the mid to late 2010 Warriors. But yeah, I mean, certainly it feels like despite how great he's been and the longevity and the consistency and just the not slowing down. I mean, he's slowed down athletically, but he's made up for it with his mind and his skill and his footwork and all that stuff. Has definitely had some bad breaks at times in his career. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Time is a flat circle. Braun with elite performance in the playoffs and his teammates fail to reciprocate. I've seen this movie before. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like when we're talking about there's just a real depth disadvantage here for LA. Like I mean, you look at the Lakers bench scoring, they had 15 points. Jared McCain nearly outscored them himself with 12. You had Isaiah Joe with 9. You had Caruso, Williams, case on what, like, it's just, they're just a deeper team. I think they're the deepest team in the league. And it's not even just like depth. I think it's most of their bench would be starting elsewhere for a lot of the league. And like, that's just the luxury that OKC has. So like, they're a weird super team because you could say, like, if you compare like Shea, Chet, and J-Dub to some of the other star trios we've seen, they're maybe not quite at the same level. Like I think Shea is, but I mean, Chet had a monster game. So we'll like, this could be overall a postseason where Chet just ascends to a different level. He's obviously going to make an All-NBA team, but I think for some people they struggle evaluating the Thunder because they look at their 3 stars and they don't feel like they're on the same level as some of. It's not Steph and KD and like stars of that magnitude necessarily with Shea is, but the other guys. But this team is just so loaded with their depth that like they're almost a super team in the sense of like their depth is their superpower, right? Their depth is what makes them a super team more so than even their star power at the top. And I think you saw that tonight. Like they just, to a man, won a lot of the individual matchups. Peter, thank you for the super chat. SGA didn't score 20 for the first time in a calendar year and still lost by 18. OKC so impressive. McCain, better known for TikToks, makes immediate impact. Yeah, I mean, that's why I said at the top, like on the one hand, there's a lot to be encouraged by in terms of LeBron's performance, in terms of their defensive performance against Shea and the execution of it. At the same time, if I told you that Shea had 18 points and 7 turnovers and I asked you to predict the score, I think many people would have at least a single digit Lakers loss, if not a Lakers win. And the fact that he had that performance and they still comfortably won this game, that is, that part's a bit concerning. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. AR is a good player who can have some good games for you, but he's not a consistent number 2 option for you night in and night out. I mean, I think he had, in my opinion, he had ascended to being a number 2 in the regular season, and he had performed at a number 2 level in the regular season with some exceptions, including OKC and San. Like there were certainly some games he was not at a number 2 level, but if you look at the aggregate of his numbers, of his performance, of his efficiency, of his output, I thought he performed at a number 2 level. And there's like the Lakers' first team in NBA history to have 3 players average 20 plus points and 5 plus assists. Like this was a special trio from an offensive perspective that like we just have not seen this collective level of shot creation and ball handling and playmaking playing together in 3 stars before. However, I mean, it's just to your point, like he's not I do think there's a little bit of revisionist history with some of the playoff stuff with him where I think people have looked at him like the 2023 run. He was not supposed to be their 3rd offensive guy. He grew into that over the course of that postseason run. And I thought he had a really he was easily their 3rd best player in the Denver series and was also their 3rd best player in the Denver series in 2024. But I mean, the Minnesota series, like we found out after the fact, he was dealing with the toe stuff, but like he played. You got to judge him for the performance out there and just was not up to par. And like this, I would say this is the first time we're actually seeing him in a number 2 role, right? He's always been at best the number 3 or even a little bit lower in the pecking order. Or like with D'Lo, I think it was kind of a 3 or 4, depending on the night, depending on the matchup, whatever. But this is his first time in the number 2 role, and clearly through 3 games so far has not been up to par. And so I have no, I can't disagree with that. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for super chat. Thank you for being a member for 7 months. What are we going to do without Vando? Great question. I think as we saw, like probably a little bit more Jake, a little bit more Jackson, albeit like Jack, like we did see some small ball, and I wonder if we see a little bit more of that. So they went small for 3 minutes. And so I wonder if that's something we potentially see, especially when Chet's out there. I think when it's Isaiah, even Jalen Williams, you can maybe get away with it because I think he's more of a stretch 5. Like he's a big body and he rebounded well tonight, but he's not like an elite defender or some like interior force rim protector. So I think you could probably get away with small ball when either Chet's out there at the 5 or when Jalen Williams is out there. Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet together or Isaiah Hartenstein by himself, I'm a little nervous about the paint battle and the offensive rebounding and whatnot. But I think we could see some more small ball. The issue for LA is like they don't really have another forward side. Like they're now down 2 forward size players in Luka and Vando, and that's a lot of size and rebounding to be down. I mean, you can make a case that Luka was their best rebounder this season, or at least second best behind DA. And then Vando is on like a per possession basis, arguably their best rebounder or in that conversation. So that's just a lot of rebounding firepower to be without against the team that won the rebounding battle. Now, technically, Lakers won the offensive rebounding battle, which I think is important moving forward, but OKC won the rebounding battle in part because of how LA shot. But I mean, I know people want a Dufiro. I just don't see a Dufiro even when the Lakers have been shorthanded, JJ has like not trusted him. He's occasionally thrown him out there as a back end rotation guy, but it would be like for a game here or there. I just don't see him going from being outside of the circle of trust to all of a sudden being thrust into playing. Maybe he does. Like, I guess that would be the guy. I don't think DK can hold up defensively in this series or from a processing standpoint. Nick Smith, I don't think is ready. Bronny's the other guy, but Bronny, we're just talking about inserting a 6'2" guard into, and might be even closer to 6'1", but like 6'2", we'll say 6'2" guard into this scenario where it's just like you're replacing effectively a 6'8" athletic, high motor, rebounding forward with a 6'2" high motor guard, but like there's just a limitation there that Bronny can't replicate Vando's defense or his rebounding. So a dude's like the closest. I just don't see JJ dusting him off. Maybe we see a little bit of Maxi Kleba and he goes with some double big looks or Maxi at the 5 and tries to really ramp up the switching and the rotating and playing with a little bit more, I was gonna say speed. I don't know if I'd lump Maxi in like the speed category. It's more of a Jackson thing, but I do think there's like a tempo where with Maxi as like a trailer screener and defensively just switching everything even more aggressively in some of the rotations. You can do that with Maxi, but to me, it's probably either Maxi or it's just condensing the rotation to the 8 guys. Maybe you play Bronny a little bit, but he's not really replacing Vando. He's like replacing the spot in the rotation and some of the minutes, but it is more Jake, Jackson, LeBron, Rui, DA. Like just you play the other front court guys more. I mean, I think that's probably the way JJ's going to go. Peter, thank you for the super chat. I know AR's contract doesn't affect spending power this summer and his cap hold is favorable, but he can't get 5 years over 200 million. Max for him 4 years, 130 million. So 4 years, 130 million, that would be like 32.5 a year. I mean, I think that's lower than he's going to ask for. That's lower than he's going to push for. And I wonder if he can get more than that. I know, like what I will say with the Austin stuff, like we can talk through the contract stuff. I just don't, if Austin turns this around and has a great rest of the series, I think a lot of this discourse is going to look silly in hindsight. But it obviously can continue down this path or like get better, but still be bad. And then we are having this conversation. But I do think we should, I mean, just like think about some of the conversations we were having with Luke after the first couple games in the Houston series, and now where you would value Luke. Like we had people in the chat throwing out $30 million for Luke Kennard. I don't think those people would still view Luke Kennard in the same light. And you can make I think a decent case that from game 2 on, Luke Kennard has not even been a double-digit million player, right? So these things fluctuate. Like DA had a really strong first half where I was like, if DA plays like this the full series, you can make a case that DA is the Lakers center, at least in the short term over the next couple of years. And like, maybe he should opt out and resign. Then I saw the second half and I was like, that was like the DA I was a little bit more afraid of and like the worst version of DA. So these things can change quarter to quarter, half to half, game to game. I think Austin will play better, but does he go from like downright awful to like bad, or does he go from downright awful to okay, or does he go from downright awful to good or even great? Like I don't know how the rest of the series is going to unfold, but he obviously has to play better. And to your point, if he plays like this or anywhere close to this, then it is going to end up, I think, being much closer to that number or in that neighborhood that you're talking about than the former. Now, I think an interesting thing will be the years, because I would assume that he's going to push for 5 years, or that will be just with him being 27, like about to enter his prime. I think this is, and he's had some injuries late in seasons. Like I think from a negotiating and strategic standpoint, if I was advising him, I would tell him to go for the 5 years. So that could be its own haggle point of maybe it's 5 years, but at a lower number, or maybe it's 4 years at a higher number. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think it is premature to put Austin's next contract in ink, but certainly whatever you thought of it before, it's hard. it's hard to make a case for it being at the same number, and it's obviously impossible to make the case that it's at a higher number. Like, I think that the number's trending downward right now, and he's going to have to turn that around. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. I've said all year that Braun had a higher ceiling than AR, and I was laughed at. It's not close. Regular season is not playoffs, different levels. I think this is well said, and I tried to make a version of this when we were having the whole discourse with LeBron at number 2 versus Austin at number 2, where, and I actually referenced OKC as an example of, I said, if you look at who's had more success against OKC and who's a better entry point, it's clearly LeBron. So I said, like, the teams that have the perimeter ball pressure to bother Austin, I think LeBron is obviously the entry point into the defense, and it like Luka's going to be the number 1 option whenever he's back, and that's just how it's going to go. But between LeBron and Austin, LeBron has played better against the Houstons and the Oklahoma Cities and the San Antonios. And like, I was trying to make the distinction that it doesn't have to necessarily, like, it's more of a matchup based thing. But I also felt, and I think JJ clearly felt to some degree as well, like in the regular season, there is a just innings eating, trying to get through the regular season. And you'd rather lean on the 27-year-old than the 41-year-old to keep the 41-year-old fresh. But if it's a do or die game, or even just the playoffs, like clearly it has not been close between the two. And like LeBron's not only at like a different level. I mean, he's at a level where he's overqualified to be a number 2. Like you can make a case. I mean, he's been a top 10 guy in the playoffs easily, if not top 5. So, really the only knock you could have on him has been like some of the efficiency stuff. I think he had a 53% true shooting percentage through the Rockets series. So like the efficiency has not been quite what you would want from a number 1. Had an efficient night tonight, and obviously that'll boost some of those numbers. But I mean, he's even overqualified for like the number 2 distinction that the Lakers were putting him in. But I agree with you. Especially in that, like, I think there are maybe some matchups where they're going to have more size against, like, I think Minnesota would have been interesting because Austin had played pretty well against them. We just never saw LeBron against Minnesota this season. But yeah, I mean, between the two, like, it's clear LeBron is the better player. And LeBron is, he's just defying father time in an insane way. I mean, you could actually argue, like, I don't know if he's been the same level defensively as last year. I would probably give the edge to last year in terms of the rebounding and the defense, but I think offensively you can make a case he's been even better this season in the playoffs than he was last season in the playoffs. Obviously different role where he was more the number 2 last year with Luka there compared to now. But I mean, he's been so great offensively that I think you could maybe make the case that he's been even better this postseason. What does it matter, bro? Thank you for the super chat. The most frustrating thing was that we were in this game. We generally beat ourselves. OKC's reputation caused everybody but Braun/Marcus to fully fold. I'm glad you brought up this point because I think this is one of the things with OKC, and this is one of the things I try to talk about in the Great Western Forum preview we did that dropped today, is that, like, to me, they remind me of Golden State, where their reputation precedes them, and there is this, like, I don't know if you want to call it aura or you want to call it fear factor or you want to call it whatever. But I think despite everyone from the outside, like there's a lot of OKC hate. There's a lot of OKC isn't that good. OKC, what this, OKC, that. Like clearly they rattle teams and there's an element of like, you start to see the run coming. And once the run starts, it's really hard to stop it. And that to me reminds me of Golden State, where Golden State, I mentioned it for those who listen this morning, but Golden State, you could have a great first half against Golden State. You could have a great first 2.5 quarters. Inevitably, there was going to be a part in the game where they would go on an 18-4 run. And for most teams, it would bury them. Some teams were able to withstand that. And maybe they were up by a certain amount or they responded immediately with a run. But for the most part, Golden State would bury you with some run at some point in the game, often in the third quarter. They were famous for their third quarter runs. And like that would just be it. And that's kind of what OKC does as well. They do it more with their defense rather than the shooting, like Golden State. But I mean, they had several, like Lakers are up 3 with Marcus hitting a couple free throws. Like Marcus draws a driving foul, shooting foul, hits a couple free throws. LA goes up 22-19 with 2 minutes and 38 seconds remaining in the first quarter. OKC scores on the next possession with 2:18 left. And from that point on, they outscored the Lakers 12-4 to close the first quarter. And all of a sudden are up 5 going into the second quarter. And like, that was a huge run. That was like Lakers had, I think Austin stepped out of bounds. I think that might've been, I mentioned earlier, like Jake's little sequence of missing a layup and then having a turnover, and they just kind of spiraled. And you can have a bad possession against the Thunder, and like, no one's going to play perfect basketball. You're going to have 10 turnovers minimum against this defense. Like, there's just no way you're going to keep it under 10. But what you can't do, you can't have 18. You can't also not shoot well. And you can't also have it be in these flurries. And I thought that was what ultimately undid the Lakers tonight, was they had these flurries in each quarter. They had like 2 to 4 minutes of bad basketball in each quarter. And like the other 8 to 10 minutes, they were awesome. They even won, I think, a lot of that portion of the 8 to 10 minutes in each of those quarters. It was just the 2 to 4 minutes where they were bad or couldn't make shots or were turning the ball over. That's what did them in. And it really was like, I think if you isolate like some of those stretches, it really was like OKC won this game in like a 10 to 12 minute period of the game. The other 36 minutes, it was competitive, if not LA even ahead slightly. It was just those 10 to 12 minutes were so devastating for the Lakers. And that's what OKC does. And that's the thing, that like the Lakers have to get that 10 to 12 minutes down to like 4 minutes or 6 minutes. Like you can't have more than that. Otherwise you're not gonna beat this team. They're just too deep. They're too consistent. They're too just solid on both sides of the ball. That there's really no other way to put it. But to your point, like Braun and Marcus were the two guys who I think consistently were present and ready for the moment. And they're obviously the two most battle tested guys available right now with Luka being out. But yeah, I mean, everyone's got to be better. I think, maybe with the exception of LeBron, but I'm sure, rewatching the game, that there's stuff he could do even better. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Respectfully disagree with your take. We held SGA to season lows and 108 points. Our problem is mainly offense. If AR has a decent game, we're in it down the stretch. So, I mean, I don't, maybe I didn't make myself clear. I thought I tried to make myself clear in the season preview, and I tried to make myself clear up to this point. The biggest issue for the Lakers by far has been the offensive end. So I don't know when you submitted. I mean, you submitted this an hour ago, so I don't know if it was maybe early in the show, but I actually agree with you here that like they won the battle against SGA. They held them to a season low and they held them to a season high in turnovers, but they still lost the game. And the 108, for what it's worth, was more than they allowed from Houston. So like, yes, on paper, I mean, if you look at it from a offensive rating perspective, 114 offensive rating is like, that's more middle of the pack. It's like not a top 10 defensive performance. So point being was like, the Lakers had like an average-ish defensive night. It was a little bit slower, which I think favors the Lakers more than the Thunder. But the Lakers had like an average outing defensively. Even by the playoff standards, 114 is actually kind of high from a defensive rating perspective. Like just for some quick perspective here, 114 defensive rating would rank 13th out of the 16 teams in the playoffs. So by playoff standards, that's actually a bad defensive rating. If you look at the regular season, 114 would have put them exactly 15th. So yeah, right there, like they had an average defensive performance by regular season perspective, a below average by playoffs. But like, I don't think the defense was ultimately the biggest thing. The biggest thing, as I said repeatedly throughout my stat of the night, was the Lakers had a 95 offensive rating. Like, they cannot score against this defense for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one has been the turnovers. They averaged 17 and a half turnovers against them in the regular season. They had 18 tonight. They can't stop turning the ball over against this team. And that's like shots on goal you're not getting. If you have 12 turnovers instead of 18, that's 6 more shot attempts. And who knows if maybe you miss, get offensive rebound, whatever, go to the free throw line, whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, they're leaving a lot on the table. And unfortunately, we now have 5 games of this, of like, they just have not been able to score against this team. And doesn't mean they won't be able to, doesn't mean they can't adjust, but it's like, they clearly had, they had 4 days to prepare for this, and they had been preparing in terms of having like, they have a scout for every team in the playoffs. So they've had an OKC person scouting them the entire season and the entire postseason. And like, they still can't really generate enough offense against this team. So, I mean, certainly Austin needs to be better. Like that goes without saying. And we've said it a million times throughout the show so far, but I fully agree that the offense is more of a problem than the defense. I would just say on the Shea front, it's not going to show up necessarily in the box score, but I would love to also know how many hockey assists Shea had, because he had 6 assists, which largely were out of this coverage, but there was a lot of Shea hits the guy who then hits the other guy. Like Lou Dort had 4 assists. A lot of that was Lou Dort being the guy that the Lakers are playing off of, and then him getting downhill, driving kick or hitting cutters and whatnot. So I think if you're selling out and putting 2 guys on the ball, you're going to generate some turnovers, but OKC still outscored them by 18. So like, I think there's, the fact of the matter is they need to be better on both sides, but I fully agree with you that it's more of an offensive problem than a defensive problem. Peter says, thank you for the super chat. Holmgren, better all-around game than LeBron tonight. Peter really likes disagreeing with me. I mean, definitely better defensively and better as a rebounder. The pushback I would have would be LeBron was more efficient from the floor, like scored more efficient. Although again, if you want to say like two-way factoring in Chet's defense, okay. But I would also say like Chet, I mean, the caliber of defense that the two are going against is like LeBron's going against the best defense of the league, and in my opinion, one of the best defenses of all time. And Chet Holmgren is going against a Lakers team that has impressed defensively in the playoffs, but like they don't have a great matchup for him. Like DA is too slow for him. Rui's too small for him. I thought LeBron had some good possessions, but the Lakers switched so much that like it ultimately doesn't really matter. So I just think it's like 2 completely different caliber of defenses. If you want to, I mean, all around here, I guess you could say like if you really want to nitpick that and say Chet was the best player on the floor, but Chet was getting he had to put like, how many wide open dunks did Chet have tonight? In part because of breakdowns in the Lakers defense that I think kind of carried his line. And it's no shit like Chet, I think was the best Thunder player tonight for sure. And you could say, I probably would have put it LeBron, Chet, Shea in terms of my rankings, and then AJ Mitchell 4th. But if you want to say a better all-around game, I mean, you can make that case with the defense and the rebounding. I just think their offensive nights, despite looking relatively similar, I mean, Chet only had 1 assist. LeBron had the 6. I think there's a bigger gap in their offensive performances and the caliber of their offensive performances. One as a number 1, one as a number 2, one doing it against the Thunder defense, one doing it against the Lakers defense. But if you want to say Chet, that's fine. Pastor D, thank you for the super chat. Yo, if AR can't be an impact player in the playoffs, do we need to sign and trade him? Also, AR cannot be our number 2. It's Braun with Luka. It depends on. So, like, I would say it's one of 2 things, and I've been pretty consistent on how to handle Austin's contract. It's either you sign him and then you flip him at some point in the future, next season or the following summer, but probably next season, like once he's trade eligible, if you want to do that, or you can sign and trade him. The one thing with sign and trading is obviously like it's either got to be a team that could absorb him into their cap space, or it's a team that's sending something out that's matching and it works under the CBA, first apron, second apron, etc. But on that front, if you do acquire Austin in a sign and trade, you are hard capped at the first apron. So the second apron teams can't acquire him. And so like, it's just finding the Venn diagram of like what are the teams that need Austin that would want Austin at whatever number he ends up getting and either can absorb him into their cap space or have stuff that the Lakers would want, because I don't think the Lakers are just going to sign and trade him willy-nilly. Like they're going to want stuff back for him, like beyond just cap space if that's the route that they go. So whether it's picks, whether it's young talent, whether it's another similar player in terms of caliber of player, but maybe just a better fit or a better defender or whatever to put next to Luka, that what would be the route that you could go. But I think the tricky thing with sign and trade is it does hard cap you at the first apron as the receiving team, not the Lakers, but the other team is hard capped at the first apron. So if you're a second apron team, you have to shed money to even be able to do it, or shed money after the fact, or you just can't do it, or now that just influences like how you build your roster. Like teams don't like being hard capped necessarily, but there are certain things that trigger the hard cap, and it just that's a factor. So I think between the two, re-signing him and then flipping him at a future date to me is probably more realistic. But if there's a team that really wants him and has something that the Lakers want, and the Lakers are set on trading him, which I don't think we're close to that point right now, but who knows if we get there. Daniel, thank you for the super chat. One, yes, the roster is limited, but Jake has zero confidence and actively hinders the team. Letting Bronny, DK, Adu, or Nick Smith get a shot has to be considered. B, if AR plays like that, it's OKC in 4. I think the issue with the first part, like I hear you, and I understand there's been a lot of frustration with Jake, and I feel like sometimes, like I feel like I've been pretty critical of Jake, but I sometimes I'll see people be like, you need to rip Jake more, you need to be harder on him. Like I think a lot of times, and even with Gabe, this happened to a degree. And look, you guys, I had a viral clip on talking about Gabe and my feelings on Gabe and whatever. I think sometimes people let the offensive impact overshadow the defensive contributions, and Jake isn't a loud defender, but Jake, I still think during this entire run of him being very inconsistent to bad offensively, he has largely been a solid defender who could switch against multiple positions, who rebounds, who boxes out, who gets offensive rebounds, and who does a lot of the dirty work that does not come natural to most of the rotation. So, for example, the only guy I think that comes close to matching what Jake does from just like his actual role here is Adu, but Adu is even more limited than Jake offensively, and he just has this raw element to his game that JJ is clearly not fully bought into yet, and just feels like he needs more development. Bronny and Nick Smith are just two entirely different players, and you lose size, you lose rebounding. I think you lose physicality, and then DK, similar thing. You obviously gain some shooting and spacing, but I don't think they're close in terms of being like connectors offensively. I don't think they're close as rebounders or defenders. So I think it's more so like, I think Jake is providing half of the role that the Lakers want from him. And as long as he continues to provide half of it, he will be in the rotation. But without Vando, I mean, there is a case to be made that someone else needs to emerge. And based on how JJ's done the rotation, it's probably going to be Bronny, but maybe it is Adu. Like I wouldn't mind Adu being thrown in there. I just, it's similar to the Vando conversation that we've had where people keep wish casting Vando should be the starter. Vando should play more than Jake. Vando should play this much. It's like, that's just not the reality of the situation. JJ doesn't feel that way. So we can debate whether it should happen, but there are some things that we just don't know the answer to that we can have the debate. Like we can debate Austin's contract. We don't know what contract he's going to get. We don't know how many years. We don't know what the number is. I think I have a general sense of like the minimum of it, but who knows, right? It could go a variety of different ways. But there are some things we do know. And I feel like when there are things we do know, I would rather talk about the things that we know. And the things that we know is that JJ clearly does not trust DK, Adu, or Nick Smith. He does trust Bronny based on the way he's used him the last few weeks, or really going on like a month and a half now. But this is a tough ball hit. Like we saw Bronny in the last game against OKC, not even the last game, actually, the April 2nd game, dribbling the ball up against Kayson Wallace, gets picked twice in the backcourt. like cannot dribble the ball up against Kason Wallace. I mean, Austin barely struggles to dribble the ball up against Kason Wallace. So it's just like, I don't think they're going to go that direction. I think maybe it's a do. I mean, I would bet on Bronny to be clear in terms of these four, but it's, I think they probably need to extend it to 9. I just don't know if JJ is going to go. Like JJ has typically condensed the rotation, and I think I could see him leaning more on some of the other guys, but we'll see. And then if Austin plays like this the whole series, I mean, we're having an entirely different conversation with Austin if he plays like this the rest of the series. But yeah, I mean, Lakers don't have a chance to win if Austin shoots like this, plays like this. Mint Millions, been 35 days since. Thank you for super chat. Been 35 days since the Luka injury. What's going on? Lakers giving up. Luka not athletic body, overcautiousness, bad recovery. I'm not sure, to be completely honest. It seemed like there had been some optimism that he can maybe return mid to late first round, and now we're in the beginning of the first round, and at least to my knowledge, up to this point, there's been like the Lakers have not given an update. JJ's not given an update. There's been no change in his on-court stuff. He moved from stationary to movement, but there hasn't been the 1-on-1, 3-on-3, 5-on-5 progression that you need for him to be cleared. So maybe that stuff happens when maybe it happens, starts tomorrow, or maybe it happens back in LA when they get back to LA. But you like, if you look at like the Austin timeline, it took about a week from Austin doing those things to return. Like from the point that Austin started or around there, it's a little bit like a week and a half. And so, I mean, this series could be over quickly. And if Luka's not doing those things in the next few days, it just, unless the Lakers, it's a giant smokescreen from the Lakers, and we just, like, they've not been forthright with what Luka's been doing behind the scenes. Barring that, it's like, it's becoming tougher to see him, potentially returning in the series, unless it goes like 5, 6, 7. But even then, again, he'd have to start doing some of these things soon, because I think there's like a natural ramp up within this that I don't even think he's hit like that 1 week part yet. But again, who knows? Maybe they're playing coy, and like they kind of did that with Austin, right? Like there was no Austin's nearly back, and then all of a sudden game 3 is questionable. He obviously didn't play in game 3 or game 4, but maybe we get the Luka's questionable tags at some point here in the next few games. But I mean, right now it seems I would bet on him not returning, but that's more just me reading the tea leaves here rather than like an informed projection. It's been quiet. I have, the chatter's been quiet on it. So I wish I had more of an update, but it just feels like that, we'll know when they tell us. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Do you think Bronny didn't play because he couldn't bring the ball up against Kason in the regular season? There you go. I just mentioned that a little bit ago. Concerned about same effect after Maxey crushed him. I don't know that it was necessarily that. I think the Lakers, if we think about the Lakers' advantage in this series, the Lakers' advantage is more of their size and strength and physicality. It's not their speed. Like, they are at a pretty clear speed and athleticism disadvantage against this team. At most positions, the Thunder are just quicker than them. And so I guess depending on how you look at that, you could make a case, well, Bronny should play because he's smaller. He can match up with a Kason, or he can match up with a Jared McCain or an Isaiah Joe, or even a Dort. Like, I mean, Dort's not really like posting up or breaking you off the dribble. It's pretty much just spot up, catch and shoot threes. So like there are places to put Bronny. I mean, I would not put him on Shea, but like outside of Shea and AJ Mitchell, I think he could hang with just about anybody else on their perimeter group. And, obviously not J-Dub once he's back, but like with the current guys, I think the bigger issue is just the Lakers. I mean, if you look at the rotation, he was the 9th man. Austin came back. That pushed him to the 10th man. He's basically been out of the rotation since then. He only played he's been a rotation guy in one of the 3 games since then. And I just don't, I think the Lakers are trying to go bigger to a degree, like mix in some small ball, but they're trying to lean on, like, they have a wing advantage and they have some size advantages inside and strength advantages with DA and LeBron and even Rui in certain matchups, or Jake or Jack, like that's where they can have some success. And I think shifting the rotation to being a little bit smaller, I think actually plays a little bit more into OKC's hands. Now, with no Vando, I would not be like, I would bet on him being the guy that emerges if they do go in a different direction with the ninth spot. But I don't know it's necessarily that. I also think if you're looking at it, like that was one thing to do in the regular, like the Lakers needed Bronny when Austin was out because they just needed an extra ball handler. With Austin back, despite his struggles in game one, the ball handling is kind of taken care of between Austin and Marcus and LeBron and Luke. Like those are the four primary ball handlers. There's not a scenario in which Bronny's going to have the ball ahead of any of those guys. So I also think like his role is kind of in a tough spot right now. But with Vando out, maybe I think he's the most obvious guy to emerge. Peter, thank you for the super chat. AR versus OKC equals D'Lo versus Denver in 23 and 24. I'm not there yet because I do think D'Lo was. I mean, look, he didn't have the 3 for 16, right? He had an 0 for 7, and he had a couple of those types of performances. But I do think Austin had more positives tonight than D'Lo. Like I just always have. I think he's a much better defender than D'Lo ever was, and still had some things with the shot creation and the passing tonight, but. From a actual scoring shot making perspective and the volume of shots and just kind of shrinking tonight. I mean, yeah, I think he's going to have a better series than D'Lo did in those two, but I mean, this was a pretty bad game one. Peter, thank you for the super chat. OKC realistically could be first 16-0 in NBA playoff history, especially if Minnesota beats San Antonio. Only hope would be Detroit taking OKC to 5 or 6. OKC would sweep New York. I don't know. I'm not going to go that far yet, even though OKC is my pick to win the title. They were my pick to win the title going into the season. They're my pick to win the title going into the playoffs. What I will say with them is I think it's been interesting to see, like it reminds me of, if you go back to the Lakers three-peat and remember, like the Lakers had some scares in the first championship season, right? They had the Portland series. Even the Indiana finals series was competitive. And there were some moments there where the Lakers, I mean, they're down 15 in game 7 at home against Portland. Like there were some moments the Lakers were on the ropes. And I think if you, I mean, maybe I was a young basketball fan at that point. So I would be lying if I said I remembered the discourse about the Lakers at that point. Like I watched the games and I talked about it with my friends. Like that was the extent of my involvement in the discourse. But it feels like, to me, they've been more on that like 0-1 Lakers type vibe of not as strong in the regular season as their first season, but coming off the championship, there's a certain level of confidence. They're a little bit better. Like they did not have AJ Mitchell in this role or playing like this last year. They just found a 14-point per game bench guy off like at the back end of their bench, which is just insane. And they, to me, are kind of like, because I just see a lot of people being like, well, remember Denver took them to 7 and Indiana took them to 7. And I'm like, well, but they withstood that. They survived that and they won the title. And sure, maybe Tyrese doesn't go down in game 7. Maybe Indiana wins and we're having a totally different conversation here, but that's not how it went. They ended up winning that game. They destroyed Denver in game 7 and they're here now. And it's like, I agree with the sentiment of like, I could see them having a 16-3 type playoff run, which is a really dominant playoff run, not 16-0, but maybe they do. We'll see. Like I'm not counting out San Antonio yet. And I think whoever comes out of the East will be fresher. So maybe they're able to take like if the Lakers take a game, they take a game or two in the Western Conference Finals and they take a game in the finals, like you get to 3 or 4 losses. But certainly I think people have been relying too much on the Denver and Indiana stuff. And I'm like, I just think they're a much better team than last year. Like Shea's better than last year. Chet's better than last year. J-Dub hasn't been better, but we'll see if he's able to get healthy and what he could do. But I think the bench is better. AJ Mitchell is a guy that they didn't have last year. Like I don't know. I think they're a better team. Uida Boy, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being a member for 7 months. We lost, but shout out Rui. He low key balled out. Not even low key, high key. Rui was second on the team in scoring, and they part of how OKC plays. And one thing I'd like to see also, I mentioned some of my adjustments. I like to see LA increase the 3-point volume. I talked about this on the series preview today, but one of the things, if you look at some of the statistical markers in terms of what happens when OKC loses, and loses with Shea specifically. So they've had 12 losses with Shea. And some of the trends are the turnover battle, the possession battle is closer because OKC in the regular season and even in the playoffs, like if you kind of average it out, best team in the league at taking care of the ball and best or second best at forcing turnovers. So baked into every OKC game is like they're going to turn the ball over 11, 12, 13 times. You're probably going to turn the ball over 17, 18, 19 times. And there's already like a 5 to 7 turnover gap at a minimum. But in losses, that gap has shrunk. Another thing is the glass. They get dominated on the glass in losses. Tonight, they won the rebounding battle compared to the Lakers. Part of that was how the Lakers shot. But the Lakers did do a good job on the offensive glass, 12 offensive rebounds. So that's something that I think they can try to replicate moving forward. But they do poorly on the glass. Then the third thing is that their opponent's 3-point rate increases and their opponent's 3-point percentage increases. So opponents take 41% of their shots from deep and they shoot 41% on their shots. So point being, to beat OKC, at least if you look at the trends and the patterns of when OKC loses, you got to take care of the ball and force more turnovers from them. You have to dominate the glass, win the rebounding battle, and you have to take and make more threes. And so for the Lakers, we could debate, like, I think it's just baked in. The Thunder are probably going to win the possession battle, the turnover battle. Tonight, it was a four turnover. Yeah, two turnover, because they had a couple shot clock violations. Lakers had one too. So yeah, it was a 2 turnover difference. So Lakers did good in that. Lakers are competitive on the glass, but OKC made 3 more threes than them, and the Lakers only took 33s, which is a pretty low number. So I think LA needs to ramp up the 3-point volume. I only mention that because I think Rui's a big part of that and like could shoot even more and would love to see him be even more involved offensively. But one thing he did great tonight was like attacking from the weak side. And especially when Chet's guarding him, Chet is looking to protect the rim and help first and foremost. And OKC does have an aggressive compact shell that is protect the paint first and foremost, then spray back out to the shooters. And I thought Rui did a great job with his reads tonight in terms of attacking closeouts, like shooting when given enough space. I think he could be even more aggressive with that, but also attacking closeouts, making the decisions out of that. I thought he was just lights out tonight. And interestingly, like from a plus minus perspective, he was actually last on the team in plus minus. That to me didn't really pass the eye test. I thought some of the defensive stuff could have been better with him, but yeah, he was awesome. Like he deserves a shout out. He's been awesome in the playoffs. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Austin out for a month, but no excuses. All eyes on him. If he doesn't perform, won't get paid what he wants this summer. I agree, and I touched on this earlier. The only thing I will say is I don't feel like he's looked like the same player physically. And clearly from a jump shot perspective, like Austin finished the season at 37% 3-point shooter. So he was an above average 3-point shooter. He's not a 12% 3-point shooter, but still, it's not even just the threes. It's inside the arc too. Like if you just wipe away the threes tonight, he still went 3 for 11 inside the arc, which is just not good enough, and was blocked a couple times and missed some shots he shouldn't have missed. And it's like, so even if you want to just say he doesn't have his legs, he missed a month, the injury, the conditioning, whatever. Like even if you want to be like the most optimistic rose-colored lenses here or purple and gold-colored lenses, it's just got to be better. That there's really no way around it. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being a member for 7 months. AR putting up Bible verses for shooting splits. I had not. AR 316. That that's a good one. I had not seen that yet. That is it's fair. Pleasers, thank you for the super chat. Pay AR more than 30 to 35. Throw away the future. 3 years getting locked up in the playoffs. No help for LeBron. Series over. Shea will never play that bad. I don't want to have the contract talk yet. I think it is premature, and I want to see how the rest of the series plays out. But certainly, I mean, we're going to get there. If this is how things go, we're going to get to the point where there's definitely a number that's too high. I would say so. I think he was better than people gave him credit for in the Denver series. Like he averaged 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 48% from the floor, 62% on twos, didn't shoot well from 3, 27% on 5. Like, I think that's been, and I've been consistent in this. The biggest issue for Austin in the playoffs, in my opinion, has been he just has not been able to make threes. He shot 27% against Denver in the second series. He shot 32% last year against Minnesota. He was shooting 17% going into tonight. Now he's at 12%. So it's been 3 consecutive postseasons of below average 3-point shooting. And that's a huge part of his game as more of an off-ball player come playoff time, because last year it was obviously Luka and LeBron. This year it's going to be more LeBron. And then if Luka does return, he'll be even more off the ball. And like, he just has to be able to shoot at a certain level. And like, when we've talked about the Kyrie comparison or the Jalen Brunson comparison in Dallas, and like that sidekick guard role next to Luka, two of the things the 2 biggest numbers with that, in my opinion, are the postseason that the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals in 2022. Jalen Brunson shot 40% on threes during that playoff run. The year the Mavericks won or made the finals in 2024, Kyrie shot 40% on threes. So like, those guys had their defensive limitations. Those guys sometimes didn't have the best shot selection or the most efficient nights. But what they did do was consistently, or at least in the aggregate, shoot at a very high level as catch and shoot guys playing off of Luka. And that is, I think, not necessarily the final thing, but one of the big final things for Austin to get to like his final form of him in a playoff setting. Because I mean, he shot 44% his first playoff run, the 2023 run, Lakers make the Western Conference Finals. But since then, he's just not been the same caliber of shooter in the playoffs. He's actually, and he's not been the same caliber of shooter in the regular season. You look at that season, he shot 40% on threes in the regular season. As he's ramped up his volume, it went 37%, 38%, 36%. So he's still been an above average shooter. I said 37, it was 36 this year, but he's still been above league average, just not like at probably want a little bit higher, but certainly in the playoffs, he just has not been the same caliber of shooter. And that's the biggest thing this year. Because again, against Denver, he shot 62% on twos. That's a great number for a guard, for like any guard, maybe the exception of Shea because of how efficient he is. Most guards, you take 62% shooting on twos in a heartbeat. Even 58% last year against Minnesota. Like, I think that's another part of his Minnesota series that, like, when he actually got downhill, he shot, I have it here, 1 second. He shot 86% at the rim against Minnesota, which, like, I felt like that kind of got overlooked. Like, he was cooking Gobert off the dribble, getting to the rim, and he was able to beat their bigs off the dribble. It was just, he could not buy a jumper to save his life. Shot 0% from 10 to 16 feet and made all of his 16 to 3-point line range mid-rangers, but like then the 32% on threes. So I think the biggest thing for him has been the 3-point shooting. But I mean, tonight it was everything, right? Or everything from like an offensive perspective. And I mean, I thought the Thunder were going to win the series before this game. Nothing I saw tonight changed my viewpoint on or perspective on the series, but I do think the Lakers, I said Thunder in 5, maybe the Lakers can stretch this to 6, but they're certainly going to need a much better version of Austin. And I do agree that this will be the worst game Shea plays in the series. Andrew, thank you for the super chat. Today felt like the Lakers' best shot at taking a game in OKC. They just couldn't hit a shot. Austin needs to play better. Maybe he isn't safe in offseason. like, yes and no. I mean, obviously you want to win game one, and I felt like a lot went right for the Lakers, and the fact that a lot went right, with some exceptions, like obviously Austin and Marcus combined to shoot 7 for 31. I don't think that is a lot going right for them, but like putting those two guys aside from a shooting perspective, they had a lot go right in terms of keeping the rebounding battle competitive, keeping the turnover battle competitive, even like keeping OKC off the free throw line, the Shea stuff, season low in points, season high in turnovers. And yet it still was not a close basketball game, because if you look at the OKC side, nobody was close to having as bad of an offensive night as Austin or Marcus had. The closest is AJ Mitchell was 7 for 16. So he was like a shade under 50%. Shea was obviously 8 for 15, a shade over 50%. Chet 9 or 17, a shade over 50%. Like, I mean, and then you get into like, because Kason Wallace went 2 for 6, Caruso went 2 for 5, Jalen Williams went 1 for 3, but that's low volume. And even then, those guys combined to shoot 5 for 14, which is better than Austin and better than Marcus. So yeah, I mean, they just were a far more efficient offense tonight. I think the Lakers will have a bounce back performance offensively. My fear is like just the trade off of maybe the defense slipping a little bit, and also Shea getting a little loose. Like, I think if Shea drops 30 and 10, it's like probably looks a little bit different offensively for OKC. But I mean, certainly a missed opportunity in the sense of like, they got out to the great start. They had a 7-0 lead. It was like, whoa, like, are the Lakers about to steal game one? And like, that's going to be the headline of the playoffs is Lakers start the playoffs 5-2 and just look awesome without Luka. But then they came back down to earth to close the first, and then OKC was in control the rest of the way. Hey, Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Any chance Luka comes back by game 3, and should he need him? My perspective on should he is just, is he physically capable? And what is the injury re-injury risk? What is the re-aggravation risk? I think that's the biggest thing, because you don't want to mess with the hamstring and have this be a recurring thing, as we've seen with Jalen Williams and Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson and some other guys, James Harden. Hamstring injuries are a mother effer, and you don't want to and already this is Luka's second hamstring injury of the season. You don't want this to be bleeding into next season. And I would even say like whatever hope or chance the Lakers have to win this series, I would even be willing to jeopardize that to like preserve Luka's health for next year and like the rest of his career, because hamstring stuff can be like, I mean, Aaron Gordon just he's been really good when he's been available, but he struggled to be available all year. And he obviously had the hamstring stuff going back to last year. So it's just something that you got to be, I think, extra cautious and careful with. Any chance he's back by game 3, at least not based on like what the Lakers have said publicly in terms of what he's been doing. Maybe they surprise us all and put him as I've not heard anything on that front in terms like indicating that he would be available for game 3, and nothing that's been out there publicly from any of the reporting, and then nothing based on what JJ Redick has said. So I would be very surprised by that. Sucker Free Money, thank you for the super chat. Starting 5 next year needs to be 3-point shooting / defending big, not rim runner. OKC packs paint, no space for AR/LD. OKC toughest matchups were Boston, Indiana, San Antonio for a reason. So I agree with a part of this, and I do like, I hear you. I think it's an interesting thought. I definitely agree with the defensive side. Like, one of the things that I didn't really touch on in the DA part that now I had in my notes, and now I'm thinking like, so Pete Zayas made this point today on our preview pod, and I'm going to steal it from Pete because I think it's a brilliant point, and I could not co-sign it enough. He said with DA that he feels like the Houston series, which was a much better series for DA defensively, because with DA, it's like if you if the task at hand is in front of him and it's like just guard Alperen Şengün straight up one-on-one and be big, use your power, use your strength, use your length, and just shut him down. We saw he can do that at a very high level. He did it at a very high level for the series. When it's more like him in space and in motion and him having to process multiple actions and him having to make reads of, like, I think one of his worst things all season has just been he often has a bad stance in drop and he welcomes dribble penetration or guards just shooting over him. And there were several of those instances tonight with Shea or AJ Mitchell. And just sometimes I think if it's like a relatively like simple task, I think he can do it at a very high level. When it starts to get more complex, I think you start to see he can sometimes struggle in those. That was the point that Pete was making that I agree with. I think we saw some of that tonight. And so to this point, while I think DA's had some really good defensive moments, I think actually offensively, he's been up offensively, and from a rebounding perspective, to me, he's been just about what you would want from the center on this team. I really have, he's been, I mean, what is he averaging? I don't know off the top of my head. He's averaging 12 points and 11 rebounds going into tonight. So the points will go down, the rebounds will go up, but let's just say for argument's sake, 11 and 11 for the postseason. I would take that 11 and 11 from a non-star, non-all-star big man. You take the points and the rebounds. I don't think the defense has been up to the level that I would want. I think he's been more in the B to B minus range defensively. And to your point, would like at least an A minus defensive big. And I just don't think he's there. And I think he is more of a B to B minus defensive big. And he can be an A big. I thought against Houston, he was largely an A big, but I thought tonight he was more like a C minus big. And so that's where it just depends on the matchup and where he's at. But the only thing I would say with the 3-point shooting part of this is that I just don't think that's the style of play that Luka wants to play. And ultimately this is going to be a Luka team, a Luka center, a Luka offense. And so with the current version of the team, could a 3-point shooting big work and have some utility? Sure. But the bread and butter of the Luka pick and roll is having a rim runner. And we saw that with Gafford. We saw that with Lively. We've seen that with Dwight Powell back in the day when he was a little bit younger. We've seen that with DA. We've seen that with Jackson. We saw it with Jackson last year, obviously. So I just, ideally, you have a big who could do all three things and can rim run and roll and shoot and defend. But I think the more realistic pathway to building the roster around Luka is going to be the rim running and the defense and finding a defender at a higher level. I think to your point, the Lakers can use maybe some more shooting in general against this OKC team. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out, I think, moving forward. But I just don't, with everything we saw with how the Lakers offense operated with Luka, there is room for a pick and pop big, but such a big role within it is just having a big who rim runs and rolls and is a vertical threat. And so I just think that's such a critical part. So as long as Luka is the star of the team and leading the offense, I think that's the way they're going to go with the big. Bob the Builder, thank you for the super chat. Is there a possibility we can get AD back? Theoretically, yes, but he's making so much money that even if let's pull up AD's contract here quickly. I know there's been some of that out there from fans of, there's the report that AD might get traded again so he's making $62.8 million next year. It is so hard to match that. Now, could you do something like an Austin sign and trade and then create more cap space and absorb AD into that cap space? Technically, yes, but that would basically be your sole move. And it gets really difficult to fit LeBron, Marcus, and Rui back under the books. So you might basically be trading out Austin and Rui and potentially even Marcus, depending on how you can finagle the cap space. And then it's basically like, I mean, you have Luka, AD, and LeBron, but the rest of the group is like maybe Marcus, Jake, Vando, Bronny, Adu, and then you have the room exception, which maybe you could keep Luke or something with that, and then you have minimums, and so you're just, I think at like if adding AD is costing you Austin, Rui, and like 1 to 2 other rotation guys, like probably cost you DA too. I don't know. It's just it gets tough from a roster building perspective, I think, to build a coherent rotation and have proper depth. Seabread. Also, I don't see Washington, like, to me, Austin, like, this is where some of the conversation with Austin and Atlanta back in the day, like, 3 years ago or so, never really made sense. Like the DeJounte Murray stuff. Austin makes absolutely no sense with Trae Young. That I think is one of the worst. If I'm ranking like worst possible backcourt partners of like a certain caliber, like starting level players, if I'm thinking of the worst possible backcourt partner for Austin, Trae Young is the worst, or like in the top 3 at least. And same thing for Trae Young. Like, I think Austin has shown inability to play off of the ball and complement an on-ball player to a degree, but the defensive backcourt there is just, it's food. It's terrible. So you can't do that. Seabread 26, thank you for the super chat. Connect and Thero could help the Lakers so much, but they're not getting minutes for some reason. Lakers need to pursue like a MPJ or Peyton Watson. Between these two, I would much rather pursue Peyton Watson. I think MPJ was awesome this year in Brooklyn. He just is still not a good defender. And unless the Lakers are drastically, and maybe they go in a different direction this summer, we'll see with the roster build. But if you are for now still building around Luka and Austin, like longer term, I don't think MPJ really fit. Like, he fits offensively, of course, but you have to think about both sides of the ball, and you need to be, even if we put Austin to the side, I still think you need to be supplementing Luka with athletes and defense and high motor guys, and MPJ just does not check that box. Peyton Watson does, though. Now, he's not the caliber of shooter that MPJ is, and I don't even know, like, MPJ obviously was a 20-plus point per game scorer. Peyton Watson isn't quite there yet, although he had some flashes of that in Denver. And Peyton Watson is one of my top free agent guys, so I would love if the Lakers got him from a Lakers perspective. Dalton, I think Dalton's had some chances, and he just has not shot the ball well enough. And even if you look at some of his shooting splits, it's like much higher in the fourth. Like, he's a much better garbage time shooter than he is like actual like in-game or in competitive portion of game shooting. This year, the shooting dropped to 34%, which isn't below average, not like bad necessarily, but still you would like to see. Let's see if I can pull up. Basketball Reference doesn't have by quarter. But yeah, I mean, with Dalton, I'm less sold on this. Thero, I do think there's something there that he can help the Lakers. I made the point, like, I think with Thero, just the thing that did him in was the injuries, or the injury specifically with his knee. If he was healthy in summer league, if he was healthy in training camp, if he was healthy in the preseason, I think he would have showed out more and been given some more trust and at least more of a shot in the rotation early on. The fact that he didn't play in summer league, the fact that he was injured to start the season, like, I just think that kind of put him behind the 8 ball. All right, gonna go a couple more minutes here. Paul Parnello says that Plinka's made just too many mistakes over the years, especially with Westbrook. Yeah, I mean, there's been some real high highs over the last few years. I think the 2023 trade deadline, I think the Luka trade, the past summer with passing on retaining DFS and then turning that into DA and Marcus and Jake. I think there's been some, and obviously flipping Gabe in a second for Luke, but there's also been some lowlights, the JHS pick, the Dalton pick. I think they prematurely re-signed a lot of the group from the 2023 run, and they miscalculated how good that group was. Then they ran it back again in 2023-24, and we saw they lost in the first round instead. And that I think was more of, maybe that group was more like a second round caliber group, and they just ran into the buzzsaw of Denver. But that group, like, I felt like they were relying a little bit too much on the conference finals berth rather than like, you made it, but you got your butts kicked, and like you clearly needed to revamp the group to some degree. And instead it was like, let's just add Torian Prince and Gabe Vincent. So yeah, I mean, the Russ trade, I mean, there needs to be a whole, there's kind of a book on it already, but there needs to be like a 30 for 30 just based, I would love to contribute to that on the Russ trade and just where everything went wrong. But Sir Terrence Williams, do you think if Mark Walter offered Sam Presti a blank check, he would leave OKC to come to LA? I think everybody has a price, but especially with how great things are going, I would think in theory, Sam Presti would want to see this out for the next few years. And like, I mean, especially if they win, let's say they win back-to-back titles, like it would be unprecedented for an executive to leave on top like that, right? Like the whole point of doing this is to have the sustained success and ride it out. And so, maybe in a few years it starts to be like, maybe he sees the finish line in the distance in terms of like, oh, we have got like a couple more years left of this run. Let me go to greener pastures. Maybe that happens, but I think it would have to be a pretty big check. It would probably have like, I think whatever's the highest an executive has been paid, I think it would probably have to be at least double that. And so we're talking a lot of money here, but I think everybody has a price. Like I'm sure we all have a price of whatever your job is. I'm sure that there's a number that if someone came to you and asked you to move or asked you to do a new job, you'd strongly consider it, if not take it. So I'm sure there's a number, but I would assume that number is astronomically high. I kind of remember with like the coaching market, right? Where all the, it used to be coaches would make a few $1 million. Then like Monty Williams got the bag that he got, Steve Kerr, Eric Spoelstra, and it started to just like elevate how much coaches were making. And like now, I mean, some coaches are making more than non-taxpayer MLE guys, which actually makes sense because there's no cap on a coach's salary, and coaches are very important. But along these lines, like I think it would be, I think it always would have to be like max level player type money or very high amount. Now, would I do that if I'm Mark Walter? Yes, I would do that. I'll throw the kitchen sink, I'll throw the living room, I'll throw the dining room, I'll throw the bathroom, I'll throw everything at Sam Presti. But Perry asks, can you give him part ownership? Technically, I think so. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I mean, that's a level that I don't know if any, like, because now whose ownership are you giving Mark Walter's ownership? Or you get like that, especially depending on the percentage is worth a lot, but who knows? Maybe. We've never seen something like that. Jamie says, Dr. Chow said recovery for Vando, assuming no fracture, will come back early in the series. Okay, that's a positive update. My quick read on situation was he was out, but so I hadn't seen this, but Sham said that Vando needed stitches post game because the bone broke skin. So I guess that's what OKC's bench saw. They saw Vando's bone sticking out of his skin. So that's a brutal. I guess that happened, or that was tweeted an hour ago. And then I'll go final one here from Devin Garcia. Speaking of front office moves, what would be some things you'd like to see Mark Walter do to improve the team in the front office? I've talked about this before, but I would say both quantity and quality. So I think the Lakers have beefed up overall basketball ops, business ops, I would say progressively over the last like 5 to 10 years. And we've already seen them make some moves in the Mark Walter era. But in general, the Lakers have been on the thinner side in terms of like the go-to example I use is like if a department typically for maybe the average NBA team, at least on the basketball ops side, if a department has like 4 or 5 people, maybe the Lakers have had like 2 or 3. Now that gap has been shrinking and they have been progressively over the last few years beefing up in general. But I think, for example, like one of the things Steve Ballmer did when he took over the Clippers was he just said, basically, we're going to have the most amount of people possible. Like you don't want 100 people in your front, or you don't want 100 people as like 100 assistant GMs or 100 scouts, or like there is like a line there of you don't want to go above a certain number necessarily because at some point it's too many chefs in the kitchen, but you do want to beef it up to like, do we have the absolute best people possible in each department, each segment? And do we have like the most amount of bodies that is reasonably possible? Because I think at times in the past, it has been certain people wearing multiple hats that they probably shouldn't be. And it's like, if you're scouting, but you're also doing player development or whatever, and like you're getting pulled in multiple directions, that's taking away from your ability to do both of those things at the highest possible level. And I think having I think the scouting department is the low hanging fruit here, where obviously they turned it over earlier in the season. And that needs to be something that like they did retain some of the scouting department, but they need to beef that up and like not having as much like pro scouting on the road. And like that stuff needs to be, they need to be like, you go to the Laker home games and like there are people from other teams that are just scouts there scouting the Lakers, scouting the opponent, and like just chopping it up on the court. And that's sometimes where you hear like that intel, rumors, gossip, all that stuff gets passed around. The Lakers have been very insular with that. They have not wanted stuff to leak out. They have not wanted to get stuff out, but that also can mean sometimes you don't have all the information that you should have. So I would say in general, the thing I continue to preach is both quantity and quality. I think across the board, basically every segment of the front office could probably use an additional couple bodies at a minimum. And then also like, are you getting the best and brightest minds from like, are there some hidden gems in other front offices that you can poach? Are there some hidden gems at the college level, at the international level, at the high school level, wherever that like you can bring in and you have the best and the brightest, and you also have a certain amount of quality there. Quality, but quantity as well. It's not just like we have the best small front office, we have the best big front office. And like, I do think you've seen the smartest front offices have expanded and have a deeper, it's kind of like a roster, have a deeper bench, have more minds, have more voices. And I think the Lakers the last few years have been very insular. It has been a lot of Pelinka as the primary guy. And so I think they could just, a couple of assistant GMs, something like that, and sort of just, I think more voices at the table. And I think Ra will still continue to be the head decision maker, and he was given the extension last year. And like, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but I would like some more seats at the table and some more big basketball voices and different perspectives. Not like, I would love some prominent voices in there that have no ties to the Lakers, have no ties to Rob, no ties to Jeannie, no ties to the Rambuses, no ties to anybody. Just like are just straight basketball people that they're hired for their vision, for their performance, and even contrast with those voices. So like you're getting two sides of perspectives here. I think that's going to be really important in building out the front office. I think there had been one more. I'll do final one here from TK Baller. Do you think Peyton can reach McDaniel's level? If so, I feel like paying Peyton 30 to 35 and possibly having Jaden comps or better wouldn't be so bad. I don't think he can hit McDaniel's level as a defender, but I think he can get pretty close offensively. Like, I mean, Jaden McDaniels is even flashing some things in this playoff run that I didn't. I mean, so this year, for example, 15, we'll round up 15 points a game on 49% shooting, 41% on threes from Peyton Watson. McDaniels in comparison, obviously in a bit of a, I guess you could say smaller role, but they're probably comparable. 14.8 points, 51.5% shooting for McDaniels, so more efficient. 41.2% on three. So actually, basically, they have pretty similar numbers in volume, in attempts, and then McDaniels, I would say. I mean, we don't have enough of a sample size with Watson, right? Like he kind of popped this year, and we just, I don't think anyone. I mean, Denver chose Christian Brown over Peyton Watson in terms of an extension, so they, miscalculated it even in house. I would say I think he has a similar offensive ceiling and might even have a little bit more to his game offensively than Jaden McDaniels, though I don't want to be disrespectful or sell Jaden McDaniels short offensively. I don't think he has the same upside defensively, but I think he can be a high level, like really good defender. I just think Jaden McDaniels, we saw what he did to Jamal Murray. He's done this now for several years. He's, to me, one of the, at worst, 10 best perimeter defenders, if not even knocking on that top 5. So that, I don't know if he has like quite that same level of defensive upside, but, and I mean, yeah. So I mean, I think he can get to like 90% of Jaden McDaniels, like overall, is sort of like his impact. So that's where I am open to paying him 25 plus. 30 plus or 30 range is a little high for me, but you could talk me into it depending on what the alternatives is or alternatives are. 35, it's a little high. I would like to keep it under that. All right. I'm going to wrap here though. Appreciate you all. Again, big picture thoughts. The Lakers executed their defensive game plan against Shea at a very high level. They lost this game more on the offensive end than the defensive end. Continue to struggle to score against this team from field goal percentage perspective, from a free throw drawing perspective, from a turnover perspective, 3-point shooting perspective. They got to get better offensively. Austin Reaves has to be much better moving forward. And LeBron continues to just not only defy Father Time, but kick its ass. But I will be back tomorrow with my game 1 rewatch, game 2 adjustments. I'll also be back in the morning with Lakers Collective going live with Trevor and Jason at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.